Anak and Dallala stood before the radar screen, their focus riveted on the upper atmosphere of Edor 35. The humans are late, Anak noted, his words not requiring a translator. Years of practice had allowed him to mimic the UD language through the color-shifting abilities of his DAP, matching the brightness patterns of Dallala's species. Dallala caught his remark through her peripheral vision, her understanding reflected in the contemplative color glowing from the X-shaped crevices on her face. Her chromatic node, the single eye, at the center of this bioluminescent organ fixed on him, and Anak struggled to decipher the words conveyed by the specific combination of colors. If the humans don't show up, we should give up Dallala's colors expressed. Anak's DAP flickered with determination. We cannot abandon this, Dallala, he insisted, his difficulty with her complex language evident. To secure the reward, we must decipher the Mirak migration patterns, with or without human help. Dallala's chromatic node darkened as she turned to the window of their small research outpost, silently watching the planet's wild surface. After a long pause, her face changed colors rapidly. We can't do this alone. This isn't a death world, but it's far from normal. Anything out there could kill us. No amount of credits is worth our lives. Anak felt disbelief swell within him. This mission was their once-in-a-lifetime chance to elevate themselves from the bottom of society to its upper echelons within the Federation. Was there ever a reward without risk? His inability to express anger properly in her language kept him from being rude, so he calmed himself and prepared his DAP to articulate a lengthy argument. How can you even think of giving up after all we've endured for this planet? Anak's DAP pulsed with frustration. Have you forgotten our countless years of struggle? Or the times our careers were ruined because of our relationship? Can you ignore my exile for loving you? Though uncertain if he had mastered the syntax and semantics, they had been together long enough for her to understand past his errors. Don't you want to see the look on your family's faces when we become wealthier than any of them? Dallala's chromatic node flashed bright white, her face almost bursting with light. I wouldn't be here if I didn't want that. Building a resort here will make us rich, but what good will it do if we end up inside a Mirak's belly? We need help, Anak. If the humans don't show, we must hire other Deathworlders, not risk going out there alone. A cold shiver ran down Anak's spine. Dallala wasn't fully aware of their financial situation, but the resonance barrier keeping the Mirak at bay had drained most of their remaining credits. Besides, the deal with the humans was based on half the payment up front, leaving them short on funds to hire another team. Worse, Anak feared they had been scammed. No other species but humans had agreed to come to Edor 35 for the price offered, which now seemed suspicious. If the humans didn't show, their remaining credits would only cover their tickets off the planet and the exorbitant shipping costs of their research outpost. If they were lucky enough to sell it for even half its value. If you're scared of the Mirak, stay here while I go out and place the trackers myself, Anak snapped, unwilling to return to their previous life. He wasn't about to let years of struggling because of their interspecies relationship go to waste. Edor 35 would solve their problems one way or another. While Dallala's emotions flashed across her chromatic node, Anak hurried to gather his blaster and portable prismatic barrier. As he searched for the tracking devices, a tiny light on the radar screen caught his attention. Dallala noticed it too, and before he could warn her to lower her expectations, fearing it might be debt collectors coming after them for the loan used to purchase the planet her chromatic node lit up. The humans are here. Anak was about to mention the debt collectors, but seeing her joy, he couldn't bring himself to dampen her spirits. Despite their frequent bickering and occasional major disagreements, there was a reason they had stayed together so long and managed to afford a planet despite the odds. Unconsciously, Anak found himself standing beside Dallala, their hands seeking solace as they watched the radar screen. Only when the dot vanished did they rush toward the door, their steps synchronized. A press of a button revealed the familiar expanse of their research station, now unexpectedly occupied by a spacecraft. Dallala's chromatic node beamed with happiness, her words flowing faster than Anak could follow. He was stunned as a group of humans, clad in green and black, disembarked and advanced toward the station. As they neared the resonance barrier, Anak observed the humans' expressions twist into grimaces. When they drew closer, they collectively raised their hands to the sides of their heads. They halted at the barrier, their eyes fixated on it with an intensity reminiscent of the Mirak, as if contemplating its destruction. This was unforeseen. The resonance barrier was designed to repel the aggressive predators of Edor 35, not other life forms. Sharing a glance with Dallala, Anak made a swift decision. Despite the odd circumstances, they sprinted to the gate, arriving in moments. Standing before the humans, Enoch realized he had left his universal translator inside. As he turned to retrieve it, a small pebble struck his back. Spinning around, he saw one of the humans holding a flat screen displaying a message in familiar script: "Turn off that thing, or we're leaving." No number of humans inside the station could quell Enoch's worry. Delilah had complied with their demand to deactivate the resonance barrier, leaving them vulnerable. Was it pride or something darker that led the humans to make such a request? They had promised safety, but Enoch felt far from reassured. Leo, the group's leader, seemed distracted, frequently complaining about some equipment being annoying. Delilah had to turn off several devices before conversations could resume. The other 5 humans gave off a strange vibe, continuously moving their mouths in what Enoch guessed was their form of communication. They didn't even look at each other while speaking, making them seem like a group of crazed individuals projecting thoughts into the air. Their financial situation didn't allow for being picky, but Enoch wondered if these humans could truly protect them from the Merak. He posed the question to Leo, his DAP conveying the words, "What makes you confident enough to turn off the resonance barrier?" Delilah shot him a disapproving look, but Enoch stood his ground, waiting for Leo's response. The human's mouth moved, and words appeared on the screen in his chest. "You might not understand how, but we can detect any Merak before it gets close." Enoch felt patronized. Did the humans think him too primitive to understand their methods? His species might not be from a death world, but they had survived the galaxy's dangers long before humans ventured into space. He didn't need to understand their methods, just that they worked. Still, their arrogance irked him. "Maybe I don't." Enoch finally responded, his DAP shifting colors rapidly. "But if you're so confident, prove it works before we step into the wild." Delilah threw another disapproving glance but joined the conversation. "You were ready to go out alone, and now you're worried. Why do you have to be like that?" Enoch's anger flared but subsided when she added faintly, "They're death worlders. Be nice to them." Recognizing her concern, Enoch quickly apologized. But before he could finish, Leo's translator lit up with a message: "There's nothing wrong with being concerned. If you don't mind a complex explanation, we're happy to share how we can detect danger without seeing it." Enoch and Delilah exchanged a glance, surprised by Leo's offer. The tension eased as Enoch lowered his DAP in a gesture of humility. "I apologize for my earlier tone," he conveyed with calming hues. "Your methods may be strange, but they are valuable. Please, explain how your technology works. We need every advantage to survive this planet." As they listened attentively, Leo began, "This might sound strange, but let me ask a few questions first. Are you aware of radio waves?" Enoch was puzzled. "Of course we are." Leo continued, "What about gravitational waves?" Enoch couldn't understand why Leo was asking such basic questions. "We knew of them long before your species learned to make fire," he replied, earning a glare from Delilah. Leo, however, remained unfazed. "Your species needs technology to detect these waves, right?" Leo asked. "Correct," Enoch answered, though his anger simmered. "We humans don't," Leo said, showing his teeth a human smile. "At least not for sound waves. We have an organ that senses vibrations in the air too, actually." He pointed to the protrusions on his head. "Our brains even have a dedicated area for processing these vibrations called the auditory cortex." Time seemed to freeze for Enoch. He was stunned. Delilah, however, reacted differently, her chromatic node shining rapidly. "The resonance barrier, just like with the Merak, it was overloading your senses." Leo's translator displayed a single word precisely. Enoch remained frozen, his mind flooded with questions. How did beings who could perceive vibrations see the world? Did they use this for communication? Could they talk through walls or even in fog? Maybe they could even locate where the vibrations were coming from. But all of this depended on one thing. "How sensitive is your organ?" Enoch asked, his colors conveying the importance of the question. Leo touched his forehead, shook his head, and the other humans showed their teeth again, this time less seriously. "I apologize for my crew. They're too immature for this conversation," Leo's translator read. "To answer your question, our sensitivity is good enough to detect heavy footsteps from a distance. Even you would be easy to notice from afar, given how much sound you produce without realizing it." Enoch was impressed. So much so that he now felt confident in hiring the humans. If they shared the same senses as the Merak, they might be more useful than any equipment. Perhaps they could even help solve the puzzle of the Merak migration patterns, reducing the time needed to research the planet before the bank started investigating. If he felt fear when the humans requested the resonance barrier's deactivation, Now all he felt was curiosity about how their sound detection would perform in the field. This might be their chance to uncover the Mirak's migratory patterns and prove Ador 35's value. The planet was a vast landscape with curious structures rising from the ground's slender stalks towering over the rocky terrain, their wide circular canopies curved downward to shield their fragile undersides. Walking side by side with Dallala, Unuk gripped his blaster and portable prismatic barrier tightly, while Dallala carried only a laser gun, a weapon the humans deemed ineffective against the Mirak. Leo led the group, 2 humans at his side, all carrying heavy-looking guns made of solid metal. Another 3 guarded the rear. Unuk had been told this formation was to keep them safe, and when he asked if they would flee in danger, Leo joked that they wouldn't consider it until they'd collected the other half of their payment. Even if it wasn't a joke, it made Unuk feel a bit safer. As they navigated the maze of stalks, Unuk noticed the first practical advantage of sound detection. Unlike him and Dallala, the humans never took their eyes off the path. Their communication didn't require eye contact, allowing them to constantly scan for threats. Unuk was trying to gauge the range of their communication when Dallala's chromatic node lit up. "Did you remember to bring the trackers, Unuk?" she asked, her question annoying him. "Of course I did." Leo is carrying them, and he promised he has a safe way to attach them to the Mirak. Her chromatic node emitted a faint light. "So you trust them now?" Unuk was puzzled. Earlier, she urged him to be nice, and now she questioned him. "What's the problem, Dallala?" "They're behaving well for Deathworlders. Why bring this up now?" Her chromatic node glowed with concern. "I've been thinking. If something happens to us, we lose our claim and anyone else could bid for it. When the humans realize the Mirak migration patterns are the key to valuable areas, they might see us as the only obstacle to claiming this planet." She had a point. Normally Unuk would have caught this, but now their future relied on the humans' decency, if such a thing existed. "We're broke, my love. Our species won't help us. Without the humans, this planet's a dead end. We're betting everything on their good intentions." Unuk patted her back. Though she didn't respond immediately, she eventually held his hand, signaling her agreement. Their journey continued until they were deep in Mirak territory. Leo suddenly stopped, raising his hand a pre-agreed signal. Unuk and Dallala raised their weapons, but no immediate threat appeared. The humans scanned the surroundings, guns ready. Leo locked his aim in one direction, and just as Unuk began to doubt anything was there, a Mirak emerged from the shadows. The 4-legged creature charged at Leo with surprising speed, its elongated limbs fluid, despite its jelly-like body. Its long neck swayed, and its eyeless mouth gaped wide, ready to engulf Leo. Unuk imagined Leo firing, but he was reminded of what it meant to be a Deathworlder. Instead of shooting, Leo waited until the Mirak was nearly upon him, then delivered a single heavy punch that knocked the creature out cold. With the Mirak down, Leo aimed his gun at its rear, carefully lined up the shot, and squeezed the trigger. The gun's muzzle flashed, and the Mirak scrambled to its feet and fled, a tiny hole in its back, the only evidence of its close call. Unuk grasped the situation when he noticed a light flickering on his wristband, indicating a signal from the first tracker. Dallala noticed too, and Unuk's mind struggled to accept the absurdity of what had happened. Leo had shot the tracking device into the Mirak. Before he could fully process this, more Mirak emerged. The humans tracked the creatures before they appeared, and like Leo, refrained from shooting, opting to fight with fists and kicks. Leo effortlessly dispatched the first Mirak with his bare hands, while his companions found it more challenging using their guns' butts to subdue the creatures. Unuk and Dallala watched this fearless display of efficiency in awe. Unuk even lowered his blaster and barrier, finally grasping the difference between him and a Deathworlder, a being from a world so fiercely competitive that relying on a single sense wasn't enough. The fight continued until Leo ran out of trackers. He threw a small metallic sphere into the stalk maze, where the Mirak were emerging. A flash of light followed, and soon after, even the defeated Mirak fled, none daring to return. Leo returned, adjusted his translator, and faced them. "Unless you have more trackers, our deal is done." Unuk and Dallala exchanged glances. "We're grateful for your help," Unuk conveyed, "and impressed by your sound detection." Dallala's node flashed. "If we'd known Deathworlders could scare off the Mirak so easily, we wouldn't have bothered with the resonance barrier." Leo's translator displayed his response. "How much did you pay for that thing?" The other humans gathered, curious. Unuk and Dallala rarely discuss personal matters, especially with Deathworlders. But after witnessing how easily one of their biggest problems had been solved, Anak decided to share a little. 30,000 for the barrier, plus another 20 for shipping. Leo exchanged glances with his crew. Really? When we heard someone had bought our favorite planet, we decided to visit one last time. Imagine our surprise finding just 2 business partners running the show from a tiny outpost. Anak and Delilah had no idea that their next decision would change their lives forever. They couldn't have known that a sentence, which had always complicated their lives, would win them the sympathy of these humans and lead to a long-lasting friendship. That sentence was expressed by Delilah, who exchanged a complex look with Anak before her chromatic node flashed a short sequence of colors were actually a couple. 12 local years later, Anak stood behind the bar counter, its design inspired by the many things he and Delilah had seen on their trips to a certain blue death world. The glass walls provided a stunning view of their mountain resort on HFY 35, carefully chosen for both security and practicality. As he did every day at sunset, Anak slowed his work to savor the view. Even after all those years, he remained captivated by the reflective canopies, a sea of exotic colors from the high vantage point. His dap relaxed as he recalled the countless hours spent planning this sanctuary, a dream to create a place where beings from different worlds could coexist in harmony, appreciating the exotic flora and fauna of HFY 35 without fear. As the sunset cast the resort in a golden hue, Anak knew they had achieved their goal, but his contentment was shattered when he noticed Delilah approaching with 4 AR, the same species as his wife. The familiar tranquility was replaced by growing unease. Delilah's expression was composed, but her eyes held a silent plea for help. Anak, understanding her unspoken language, recognized her distress. The 4 trailing individuals confirmed his suspicions they were the type of clients who could turn a serene evening into an ordeal. The group was led by a towering female, her chromatic node a kaleidoscope of shifting hues, even before reaching the bar. She began immediately, "Why have you brought us to an Uloth? We demand to speak with your manager. This is unacceptable. We need someone who can solve a problem, not send us back to our rooms for translators." Delilah was nearing her breaking point, her chromatic node barely containing her anger. Anger. "He's my husband. He'll understand you better than anyone with a translator." Anak saw the disgust spread across their faces, the same pattern he and Delilah had seen countless times whenever they mentioned their relationship. The female turned to him, her expression one of disdain. "Him? Understand us?" As if an Uloth could ever grasp the intricacies of our language. Careful with his words, Anak projected their language through his dap. "Pardon the inconvenience, dear customers. How can I assist you on this wonderful day?" Surprised gazes met him, but the tall female quickly masked her reaction. "Are you really the manager?" Anak and Delilah were the resort owners, but few customers knew this. They employed many of their kind, and dealing with them usually led to such unpleasant interactions. "Yes, I am the manager. What issue brings you here?" The female's chromatic node flashed. "Your employee won't let us into the lower gardens, saying it's off limits for our species." Anak had heard many complaints, but this was new. It was common knowledge that HFY 35 was dangerous, and most wanted to avoid the risks. "I'm sorry, but the lower gardens are forbidden. The Merak is aggressive, and the gardens are too close to their migration path." Her node flared again. "We saw a group of humans in the gardens. Your employees let them do whatever they want. Why can they go in and we can't?" Anak felt he might lose this argument. The whole group stared at him, awaiting his answer. Still, he remained calm. "I understand your confusion. You might not know, but humans are death worlders. They have strong bodies and 2 extra senses, one of which lets them detect vibrations. They wouldn't be caught off guard by an attack. That's why we allow them in." The lower gardens existed because humans preferred an environment free from what they called noise during their vacation. But before Anak could explain, the customer continued. "That's ridiculous. We saw no Merak in the gardens, and the humans let their children run around unsupervised. This is just unfair, but what can you expect from rules set by someone who hates their own species?" The group stared at Delilah, their insult clear. Anak exchanged a glance with his wife, and just like that, they decided to stop being nice. The rules exist for a reason. But if you want to see why human children are allowed in, we can show you a video of the last time the Merak tried to attack them. Gone were the days when Anak and Delilah had to endure such remarks. Now they could afford to lose a customer or 1,000. The tall female tried to argue, but Anak did the rudest thing possible. He turned away while she spoke and walked to a screen, searching for the footage. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw them muttering about complaining to the owner, but all he did was hit play. The footage began with a calm garden, children playing while parents chatted. Suddenly, a large group of Merak appeared, heading toward a little girl by the lake. The adults rushed, but the distance was too great the Merak would reach her first. That's when a large dog noticed and rushed the Merak like a blur. Anak turned to the group, seeing their attention on the screen. The dog bit through the Merak, one after another, evading or overpowering them. By the end, the Merak had been halved, the survivors fleeing. The dog, unharmed, wagged its tail, ready for more. Surprised, the heir stared at the screen. Anak held Dalala's hand and waited. If you still want to go to the lower gardens, you can sign a waiver he conveyed through his DAP. But let me share a secret. There are no resonance barriers down there, and the dogs are the only things keeping the Merak away.